yeah.
Yeah. Welcome back, people, to Layer 1. We've returned again.
Yeah. Who'd have thunk?
Who'd have thunk? But,
well,
yeah, so whenever you're listening to this, it's either a holiday of sorts, Christmas, a New Year's, Third Impact, I don't know.
Yeah, I was about to say, maybe you're dead. Maybe you're not
dead.
listening to this.
The World War III, the Second American Civil War,
Yeah.
one of the few, one of the good handful of
maybe Alien Invasion, Project
yeah.
Bluebeam.
What's the Gears of War Alien Invasion Day called?
Oh my god, what was it called? Fuck, dude. It's been so long since I played Gears.
Is it like E-Day or something like that? Or
I think it was E-Day for Emergence Day. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Because they're not alien. Well, I mean,
alien. Yeah.
I mean, really, humans are the aliens. Because it's not Earth, and they come out of the ground because they were always there. But then you also find out they're not native either. They were created by like secret fucked up experiments by the human government, and it's just Gears gets weird, man.
Aside from going into it before we go into a Gears tangent.
Yeah, before this just becomes the Gears of War episode.
Yes.
We're here, you've seen the thumbnail. We're here to talk about hypernormalization.
Yes, and the good old global Psyopticon we all find ourselves in.
Yes. So
totally not a redo.
So real.
Don't worry about
it. Hey, don't let him down. Hey,
Layer 1 remastered HD featuring Dante from Devil May Cry.
So real.
Oh man,
it's true. We got his voice actor. He's here right now. We didn't. He's only gonna say one line. He's saving it for one line because we only have the money for the one line. But you know.
And it's made us completely broke. We're living out of our non-existent cars now.
Yeah, exactly. You're welcome, guys. This is what we do for you.
Yes. For those of you who don't know what this is from, I'm probably just gonna link the actual documentary, so you can watch that, and then come back and watch this and see what little evolution of things, because very
I mean, it's a long ass documentary.
It's long, but no, I was gonna talk about it in like it's so real, but it doesn't. Because it's from a few years ago.
It's a bit outdated.
A little outdated. It doesn't know. Outdated. They don't know what.
It's from 2016.
If only they knew how bad things could really get. Oh. So if you're out there, if you hear this, Mr. Documentary guy, make a part 2 soon.
Well, so so I guess first let's talk about the guy who made hypernormalization a bit, Adam Curtis.
Yes.
So Adam Curtis he's British, right? He's been making documentaries for the BBC for a while. Since the 80s. He's been working for the BBC, and basically he makes documentaries that kind of just talk about, I don't know how to describe it. Just it's a mix of sociology, psychology, philosophy, political history, and just politics. It's kind of just they're documentaries about the modern world that we live in at the time that they're made.
Yeah.
Right. He's been making documentaries since the 80s, but I think the first one that really kind of like sets him apart, that really like it's like creates the Adam Curtis style and the way of making documentaries that we know of today. Because before this one documentary called Pandora's Box from 1992. He's just kind of he's just kind of making stuff for the BBC, kind of at random. A few shows, a few little kind of here's interesting little things, right? But the Pandora's Box documentary is really like, it's this big it's this big kind of, I guess, takedown, I want to say, of like it's about kind of the technocratic, rational, like hyper rational obsession with the rational and rational action and agents type of politics that was really starting to, I mean, it had been around for a while, but was really starting to solidify itself into what we know of today at that time in the early 90s. Then a few years later, he comes out with The Living Dead, another documentary series about kind of how history is used and manipulated, by politicians to manipulate people. Another big one he does later is in 2002, Century of the Self, right? They talking about kind of how basically propaganda, but also like the dangers of hyper individualism.
Yeah.
So on and so forth. And he comes out with a couple more over the years, and then 2016 comes, and for everyone who was alive then, right? We all know what that period was like. And he comes out with Hypernormalisation, right? Which is this big, like over 2-hour documentary, kind of just about how things got to where they were right at the time of 2016.
Yeah.
Right. With kind of, it's I described it as watching like a Metal Gear Solid cutscene compilation, right? Where it's just like, here's how like Henry Kissinger trying to like stop the plans of Bashir al-Assad's father to unite the Middle East, and conflicts with Israel Palestine way back in the 70s, and Gaddafi, and stuff going on in the Soviet Union, and financial stuff in New York, and all this stuff led to the world of 2016, how it led to the rise of Trump, how it led to Brexit, how it led to kind of the refugee crisis going on at the time, to stuff that happened just a few years earlier, which was also part of this mix, like Occupy Wall Street and the Arab Spring, and how it's all part of this big this chain of events, right? That led to all of that, and to now by extension. And I guess you could say the basic thesis of the whole thing is to show that all of this happened because the elites, and not just the elites, but the kind of activist class, and even just really everyday people kind of gave up on politics, right? The dream that you could kind of change the world politically, how it really died in the middle of the 20th century. And people kind of retreated, whether it be the political class, the financial class, activists, normal everyday people, kind of just the dream died, right? And so all you kind of left is because things get so complicated, right? After the end of the Second World War, right? People kind of they're not able to process it all, right?
Yeah.
And so it becomes overwhelming, right? There's too much information, there's too many factors, there's too many things going on. People are suddenly thinking on a global scale instead of just local scales, and this also leads, another part of the documentary is how this leads, right, to kind of offloading that attempt at calculation, right, at trying to figure out all these factors, try to map them all into something sensible, onto digital technology, right, onto algorithms, on artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
right, and kind of how, I mean, you get the sense that, like, what Adam Curtis is advocating for is just, we need to, like, wake the fuck up. We need to snap back to reality, right? Because we can't be in the dream world any longer. Yeah, we can't escape the reality of how complex the world is, of how kind of fucked it is, right? We have to just take it head on, and it's one of those things where, like, we got here in the first place because we couldn't handle it. What's, like, I don't, like, maybe we can learn to handle it, but that's the one thing that kind of leaves me by the end of it, kind of like, I don't know if we can, right?
Yeah, because as I was mentioning, 2016 to now, a lot has happened. Like, so much. Like, as we
Hmm.
say, with things accelerating constantly in all facets of life and technology and politics and everything. So it,
Yeah.
yeah, because the documentary does like this thing where it does tie in like specific arcs, I guess, that have only just recently, like literally within the last week, come to their full like
Conclusion, yeah.
end, the conclusion of these things, because it talks about the whole early days of the Syria situation and the
Yeah, it starts with Kissinger and
yeah
Assad, right?
yeah
Like, that's how it starts.
yeah and leads up all the way to the rise of Bashar, and as we've seen, he just got deposed very recently, and this
Kissinger's
whole
dead and he's still stacking W's, dude.
yes
Ah,
yeah it's insane, and you know it's it ties that in with the whole evolution of technology and how it's facilitated or assisted these kinds of chaotic situations. Like, it brings up like the air there's so much to go through, but it's
it brings up a bunch,
like
yeah,
talking about
Arab
the Arab
Spring,
Spring being one of those like
Occupy,
big
a
things.
whole bunch of stuff, right? There's so much going on. Again, I really recommend watching it if you have the time,
Yeah,
right? If you have, like, almost 3 hours to kill, like, go do it.
yeah, it's
Um,
very profound.
no, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, to anyone who knows you, like, it's kind of old hat, right? Like,
Yeah,
especially I think if you're around our kind of side on the internet, you're just like, well, yeah, duh.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff is already known, but I think in 2016, a lot of this stuff wasn't,
No,
right?
just hitting the like
Yeah.
just getting out there now.
Well, I first watched it when it came out,
Right.
so I remember being like, holy shit, right? Like,
Mhm.
damn, like, dude cooked. I didn't know. I mean, again, I was a teenager, so of course I didn't know. I mean, I knew a lot more than I probably should have, honestly. But, like, I didn't know about kind of the Assad family, right, and their history, and rule over Syria, right, and kind of the stuff they've been doing, engaging in their kind of war against the West, of all the all the forces they unleashed, right, which is a huge part of what this documentary is about. It's kind of how, I mean, it literally starts. The documentary literally starts about how, there's two places in the 70s, New York and Damascus, where this dream is born of a way to kind of run the world without politics. That's
Yeah.
literally how it starts. Um, which is, I mean, it's interesting, I think, right? Because I think anyone who kind of knows anything about at least the American side of this history, like, yeah, you do kind of, you look back and you're like, yeah, like people did kind of give up on politics right after the 60s, right? This, I mean, the 70s were a shit show.
Yeah.
Like the 70s were a really bad time, and it's one of those things where um at the beginning of this documentary kind of shows you how this failure of politics leads to kind of the finance industry really taking hold and control of America, right? Um, and on one part you're like, yeah, boo, right? Like fuck these guys, fuck the banks, fuck the corpos. But on the other hand, it's I think whether and I'm not entirely sure he intended this, but like he paints the picture really quickly, really offhandedly too. That like, well, this was the fault of political actors, right?
Yeah,
A
yeah,
lot
with
of
that
these,
little picture he painted of New York, it being just a shithole in the mid
it was a
70s,
shithole,
and
and it was a shithole not because of the banks. It was a shithole because of
of
politics.
yeah, yeah, exactly, and that they kept having
The
to
banks
like
were helping keep it alive.
exactly, yeah, yeah, that's how they painted it at the start. There, it was just like a little, like, oh, eventually the banks were just like, you know what, we're good. We've been doing this, and the city just keeps getting
Well, because
worse.
yeah, well, because it becomes clear that it became clear to the banks that the city was never going to be able to pay off its debts,
Yeah,
right? So they go, well, like you're not going to be able to do this, so um, give us control or we'll fuck you over.
yeah,
like we're the ones like we're financing this. Why like you're running this into the ground? Why not? Like we can run this better than you can. And frankly, at the time, like yeah, like why wouldn't you? You know, the politicians were running New York into the ground. So I completely see how someone could think, well, shit, let the financial industry run it because these
yeah,
guys aren't doing it right, right?
yeah,
And
exactly.
I think that's one of the kind of hardest things about the documentary for a lot of people is that he kind of goes he also goes at the start into kind of how like activists and stuff kind of they give up too, they retreat into kind of hyper individualism, um rather than any kind of action because, well, and again, I don't think he doesn't say this, but it's if you like have a brain, it's kind of easy to like put two and two together. It's like, well, because their politics failed, right?
Yeah,
Like the activists, the activists completely won in the 60s, and then what happens as a result of their policy getting implemented, right? Of them getting everything they want, basically. Well, the country damn near falls apart,
yeah,
right? And this is kind of something a part of very recent American history that like is never really acknowledged, right? Is it's just like, well, and again, it's never said, but it's strongly it's always danced around in the documentary, right? Like later on, right, where it's talking about the Arab Spring, right, and how many Western leftists and liberals supported it, right?
yeah,
And but then it's like, oh, and then they found, it's like, but then a lot of the people in power also supported it because it just also happened to be what they wanted, and it's just like, okay, you're dancing around something that no one wants to talk about here, which is that like every action by like the liberal leftish academic activist and academic class over the past 100 years really has has been exactly what has done nothing but serve the interest of capital. Has been nothing but like be what the corpo bankers, financial class, what they want, right? Because
Yeah.
there's always it's one of those things where it's like, um, you know, there's no, they may want it for different reasons, but ultimately the 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 liberals on the left want these things for moral reasons, and that is something that the corporate class has exploited, and there's nothing really that can be. It's hard to walk back from that because you don't have a moral argument against it, right? In fact,
Right. Yeah.
you have a moral argument for it, right? Big instance, women being able to work corporate jobs, right?
Hmm.
The corporations wanted that. They helped to get that off the ground, right? A lot of early stunts of that kind of led of like activist stunts that kind of led to that were corporate backed basically, right? Like everyone knows that like Bernays orchestrated a stunt to make it so that like it became fashionable and like socially okay for women to smoke, and publicly too, right? As a big like, hey, where do what you want. Don't let men tell you what to do. You proud, right?
Yeah.
And it did genuinely help the kind of cause, right? But like, it was also just a big marketing stunt to up cigarette sales, right? And then again, the kind of women can suddenly have work corporate jobs, office jobs, all that stuff. Okay, well, they wanted that too because guess what? They don't ever have to raise wages meaningfully ever again, right?
Yeah.
The labor force
Exactly.
is doubled overnight, so they get to cut costs forever, basically, right? There's a this is the reason why wages haven't gone up in real terms since the 60s and 70s. Um, Again, there's plenty of examples of this, right? Where it's like the left and liberals cheer on like what corporate assholes and like like career politician like warhawks want, because their morality is constructed to lead to these things. And so it's like, okay, well, what do we do then, right? What do we do? Like, everyone always talks about, well, they're just a violence, like a certain Italian stallion in recent news. But frankly, I don't. So long as things are just good enough. Like, I,
Yeah.
I mean, if people in the '70s didn't do a heckin' revolution, dude, they're not gonna do it in the 2020s. I don't know what to tell
No.
you.
Yeah. Exactly. That's what
Right?
everyone.
Things were real bad in the '70s,
Yeah.
and
And
there
like
was
that
lots
would
of
have.
terrorism in the '70s.
Yeah. Would
There
have
was
called for
people
it.
shooting politicians, assassinating politicians, and all CEOs and all this stuff, right? And nothing changed. Things just kept going according to plan, right? You had the Weather Underground and groups like that, right? Nothing happened. It was just kind of crazy and chaotic for a while, and then things go back to normal, really, in the '80s.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's this weird, as it shows, this weird like two sides of it, where how the West doesn't do that. You don't see the glorious, revolution, take up arms against the corporations and the capitalism or whatever enemy they perceive as being the enemy of like the revolutionary types
Yeah,
versus just the endless revolutions across the Middle East and the civil wars and the, you know, this weird dichotomy of the two
of conflict.
societies, yeah, of conflict, exactly, and how it showed like the Syria and Iran and Libya. It those are the big focuses of it.
It's an interesting dynamic because like yeah, you have all this conflict in the Middle East, but like nothing really changes regardless.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That on both ends, there's still no change. Like regardless of
How
what
crazy
the
you get,
how
yeah.
crazy you get, what the people do, what who they tear to shreds in the street. Like,
Well, it's not only that nothing really changes, but like again, as kind of shown with the segment on the Arab Spring, and anyone who just knows how the Arab Spring turned out is actually it like it goes things actually end up better by the end of it for the kind of global elite, right?
yeah,
Biggest example recently with Syria, right? Where hey, suddenly Assad and the Baathists aren't in control anymore, so Syria is no longer going to be a controlled economy, right? It's going to be free market. Guess who wins? Like I said, Kissinger, man, he's dead and he's still stacking massive W's from beyond the grave. Because
yeah,
guess what? Syria is going from a controlled economy to a capitalist one. Right? And I see leftists, liberals, well, for a while were like eating this shit up like it was 2011, 2012, the Arab Spring all over again, right? As if no one learned their lesson, right? We all know how things ended up in Libya. We all know how things ended up in Egypt.
yeah,
It's so on and so forth, right? None of these places are any better off for what happened, and you see that again in Syria too, right? It's like, oh, who are the rebels? I mean, it's um like a literal Al Qaeda offshoot.
yeah,
You have Islamists, violent Islamists, who are like probably gonna like they're violent Islamists to such an extent where a large portion of the Druze community in Syria are like, fuck it, we want to secede and join Israel because
yeah,
we know these guys are probably going to genocide us. That's where we're at,
yeah.
right?
It
And
really is.
if it's not the Al Qaeda offshoot, it's the like Turkish proxy in the north or the like Kurdish ultra nationalists in the north east, right? Who you know they're not any better, right? These are people who control a huge segment of the country that isn't even like fully Kurdish, right? It's like half Arab, and they
Yeah,
want to be a part of. They don't want to be a part of a Kurdish state. They want to be part of Syria. Um, but the Kurds, the SDF to be more precise, have a kind of iron grip over this part of the country that they control. So the whole thing is just a shit show. Where it's like, okay, well, Assad's gone, but like again, it's this thing. Where it's like now it's probably just the Syrian civil war is probably not over. It's probably just the first phase is over, right? Assad's gone, but
yeah.
you still have
One
all these
faction
competing
is out.
factions.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, the main faction is out,
yeah.
and
The
that's
main
how
faction. Power vacuum
like
time.
yeah, which is like again, if we learned nothing from the Arab Spring, why are we cheering this on? Every time this happens, things get worse.
Yeah, look at Libya. It was a relatively, intact country under Gaddafi, and now it's still what are we at? Like almost 15 years later, and it's still like split between two, three factions, maybe more.
I
You
think
don't
it's
know
only
yet.
like two factions
Just
now.
two,
It's
two
it's
now.
it's
Okay, yeah,
consolidated a bit
a
if I remember
little, but
correctly, but like
still kind of a
it's like
deadlock. You don't hear about news from there anymore. It's just kind of like, uh-huh, yep, still fighting.
yeah,
But it's just
exactly. It's
like,
like
oh, there's
cool.
your glorious revolution.
Yeah, it's like okay, like 2/3 of Libya are now controlled by like a brutal warlord. Like,
Yeah,
awesome. um, you know, all this stuff. Right, the situation in Yemen, in Lebanon, Egypt, like it's just like none of this has gotten any better.
No.
And I don't see like this is the issue is every time we get rid of these strongman dictators, the country actually just kind of falls apart into sectarian conflict, right? Because suddenly the guy who drew everyone's ire, who united all these disparate groups, is gone, and now they can focus on their differences
Yeah.
and start shooting at each other. It's one of these things where, again, this Kissingerian kind of desire to manage the world, it just doesn't work out, right? The world is in fact too complex, right? You never know what the
Mhm.
consequences of your actions are going to be. Frankly, I think people are just too ideological, right? That's another part of the documentary, right? Where like, you know, the war on terror, we think getting rid of these autocrats, all we need to do is just get rid of Gaddafi, is get rid of Mubarak, and these countries will become Western style democracies
Yeah.
just spontaneously. But they didn't, and they were never going to, because these aren't Western nations, right? There's different values. There's different competing values. Um, these are not, again, time and time again, who are the people who take over largely? It's warlords and Islamists.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Like, and you're left at the end of it thinking, well, shit, was this any better than the dictators? Frankly, a lot of the time, the dictators were better, right? Because a lot of them were secular, right? So they didn't like discriminate or like try to genocide minority groups in these countries.
Mhm.
A lot of the times they were ardent defenders of these groups, like Assad in Syria with the Alawites and the Druze, right? Who now face threat because there's a new regime in power somewhat, and it doesn't support their existence, right?
Exactly. But
um,
the people who, you know, all the modern activists and so forth are cheering this on. They're so happy that the evil dictator got, deposed, that, you try and tell them
mhm.
these things of what's going to happen. And they're like, oh, but at least
But
the the Islamists are free from under that evil rule. And, it's like,
yeah,
do you not know what
it's
happens every other time
well,
this happens?
it's exactly what the documentary was talking about.
Yes.
Is that these people have retreated back into a false, more simplistic reality that's black and white
Yeah.
because it's just simpler.
Yeah.
It's easier to understand. There's a clear good guy and a clear bad guy. You don't have to think about consequences. You don't have to think about, well, are the rebels all that good themselves? All these different groups, because there's not just, the rebels are multiple different factions. You don't got to think about the complexities of reality. You can just retreat and go, well, the bad, evil tyrant is gone, right? Yay, right? Like it's fucking
Mhm.
Star Wars or something.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, yeah. The effects of media and fiction on these people is doing its purpose, I suppose.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing that I like about the documentary is that, like, well, yeah, it does talk about it kind of touches a little bit, very briefly, I think, on how media entertainment kind of enforces this. I think it's important to remember that, like, even before that, like, the retreat happened first, and then the media enforcement came along,
Yeah.
right, as a kind of coddling, Is it kind of like, no, it's okay, yeah. All you gotta do is just defeat the Empire, right? That's all you gotta do. You just gotta kill the guy. You gotta kill the Emperor, right? That's it.
Mhm.
Gotta kill
Yeah.
Palpatine.
Yeah.
But the checking out of reality happens earlier. It happens first
Right. Yeah.
because things just are too complex, right? And I think it's interesting seeing the different clips of like people who worked with Kissinger talking about Kissinger. And it's really funny because you really see why Kissinger came to prominence as they talk about him, right? Because they're like, it's really funny, honestly. They're like, look, yeah, he's an asshole, but, but, right? He's one of the only people who's able to actually take in all this information and not be overwhelmed by it. And I
Yeah.
think that was a fascinating part. That's like is not touched on at all, but to me, I was like, that's really that's an important key to the puzzle, right? Is guys like Kissinger, who are able to think on this global scale, who are able to take in all this information and not be completely overwhelmed by it, right? Who are like they take on the challenge, right? Of like I am gonna play um kind of chess master here,
Yeah.
right? Because you can argue over whether they had the stuff or not, but like I think it's undeniable to say that they didn't have the ability, right, to not be overwhelmed by this information.
Yeah.
And so, it's interesting, I think, because you have, and again, like I said earlier, it's like a giant compilation of Metal Gear cutscenes, right? Where it's just talking about all these events, all these things, how they work in together, right? Like at certain at certain parts, it's talking about like Stalker, like the
Ah,
game
yes.
slash movie slash book, right? And how that leads into things because it's part of. It's really exemplary of the milieu the Soviet Union was in at the time of its writing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, yeah, it does go into that little late stage Soviet. The mirror
Well,
of right now that we saw
yeah,
of like where they were even talking about, oh yeah, the people even knew they were living in a place where anything the
yeah.
government or media said was real. But
Well, that's what I was about to say. I mean, it's not just a part of it. I think
oh yeah, and it's the
it's a
main thing.
cornerstone of the documentary. I mean, literally, the term hypernormalization comes from this period of the Soviet Union,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like, yeah, it's I think best exemplari- exemplified by the Solzhenitsyn quote, right? We know that they're lying. They know that they're lying. They even know that we know. They even know that we know they're lying. We also know they know we know they're lying too. But still, they lie. They keep lying, right? Everyone knows that what the official sources, the institutions, the authorities are saying is bullshit. But because of that, no one can believe in anything anymore. There's nothing to trust anymore.
Yeah.
There's no. It's not just they're bullshit, and we know it's bullshit. It's we don't know what's true. That's the other side of the coin, right?
Yeah.
Is we can tell that this is bullshit, but we can't tell what's true anymore because of that. Because everything you get nothing but bullshit, and you lose the ability to tell what's true, right? And you lose the ability to believe in anything, right? You get this clip in the documentary, right, of this young Russian woman who's being kind of asked, like, "Do you have any dreams, any hopes?" No. Why the fuck would I?
Yeah, not anymore.
Why would I? Yeah, she's like, why would no? Like, why would
Why
I have
waste
that?
my
No, I
time?
don't. Yeah, exactly. I know my dreams won't come true. And I think that the end of that clip, right, is really powerful, where he asks, "Do you believe?" And she's like, "Well, believe in what?" He's just like, "Well, I don't know anything really, and she's like, "Lol, no, I don't
Yeah.
believe in anything. I don't believe in jack shit. I don't believe in you. I don't believe in me. I don't believe in anything. I'm just kind of." You really see what it was like for the citizens of the Soviet Union in this time, right? Where it's just no one had any hopes or dreams. No one could believe in anything. Everyone was just kind of walking around as living ghosts.
Yeah. Yeah,
Eh,
where they tied in that little bit about the music scene, like the punk. It was
yeah,
slightly touched on, but it's
Russian Duma rock comes out
yeah,
of this,
yeah, exactly.
which
It's just
based, I guess, right? Like
yeah,
if
yeah.
at least something good came out of it.
What
um,
crippling state enforced nihilism does to a man.
exactly,
Yeah, no,
exactly.
that, and even continuing from that, the Russian angle with Vladislav Surkov's whole arc that it was touching on.
How he revolutionized Russian propaganda, really, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
he furthers this kind of sense of hypernormalization, really, from the Soviet era, because I mean, really, with Surkov, it it gets further. The hypernormalization furthers. It almost kind of stops being hypernormalization because you start losing the ability to even tell what's bullshit. Not
yeah,
that you think it's true, but you lose the ability to tell like truth and fiction,
yeah, yeah. Like that whole
right?
tactic of doing the whole rigmarole of propaganda and lying, but then telling people that that's what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's horrifyingly brilliant, right? Because he's like the big example that was given was like, yeah, like he got the Putin regime to fund uh, basically every group, right? Opposition groups, right? So at the end of the day, it leaves people kind of paranoid because it's like, well, and then yeah, telling people that they're doing it, right?
yeah,
Because then you get paranoid, like, well, look, if if the regime is funding them, then they must be part of, like, it's like this must be a psyop. This must be a glow op, right? They're glowies. They work for
yeah.
them, right? They're
Yes,
getting paid for
the
them, so why wouldn't they?
yeah,
So
control opposition, the things that people are
exactly.
still spouting today. That's literally happening out, in the States or in the West or whatever,
No,
where
yeah,
you have these
it's
like
super obvious
any
that
group
like
that pops up, it's just like, oh, clearly fed on, clearly.
it's just clearly just feds, right? So it's clear that like the not just the U.S. really, but the West in general took this tactic from Russia
Yeah.
as well. Um, but it comes out of Russia. It comes from Surkov. This what was he exactly? I forget what exactly like
Oh, like
his
a
official position was.
assistant to Putin, basically, like assistant to the
He,
president.
basically, yeah.
Yeah, like deputy
He's
prime
he's
minister. He was a few things. Yeah,
he's Putin's top guy,
yeah.
basically. At least was. I don't know if he still is, but
I believe he's
but
in entered private life after house arrest. So it's
ah, okay. So
one of those
yeah,
situations.
how it goes, yeah. Common,
Clean house.
yeah.
Classic Russia.
Classic Russia. Yeah, I was about to say classic Russia. Putin really showing his KGB roots with that one. But yeah, so you this it creates this sense that everything again, it furthers the hypernormalization where it's not just everything that comes out of official channels is a lie, it's everything is a lie, right? Or is a potential lie. You don't know. That's the horror, is this ambiguity, this vagueness, right? And yeah, clearly if that's made its way over here, right? Where people it's seeped into everything,
Yeah.
into media, entertainment, just
truly cripples any attempt at real organization that isn't astroturfed. Because everyone is always just like, that's all I hear now.
because
Anytime anyone talks about anything, it's immediately fed. Oh, you're fed. Oh, that glows. Like just instant pullback
yeah,
and
well,
like paranoia.
yeah, because suddenly like as far as you're concerned now, everything's astroturfed, right? Or at least it could possibly be.
Yeah. And
So
why take the risk to, find out when you could just not? You could just continue to do whatever it is you're doing and just accepting fate.
yeah, oh
Just
yeah,
watching it happen. Which, again, the documentary does point out, like showing people in the 70s who were doing the same exact thing that's happening now, where they're just like, oh, well, they just became like apathetic and took a back seat to like the decline, basically, and just kind of, oh,
yeah,
I don't feel like any revolution anymore, guys. I'll just sit here and watch, I guess. What
yeah.
else am I gonna do?
I'll just sit here and make video essays on the semiotics of the kitchen, right?
Yeah,
Like that's yeah, we're living through a rerun of the 70s in a way. Um, where it's just like, everyone talks a big gang, but no one really does anything. And the few who do, it doesn't change anything, right?
yeah.
Like
Comes top news story of the week,
a week,
and
and
then
then on to the next news story.
the next.
Oh god, I got a schizo like E-right Zoomer domed a healthcare insurance CEO. Uh, oh well, it's probably a psyop. It's probably glow op, right? Dude probably glows, or he's a patsy, or
Yeah,
some other schizo conspiracy theory. He's actually this, that. It's not actually him at all, right? The video, the eyebrows are different. All this insane shit. It's speculation, and then and nothing's gonna change. The board of the company just got a new CEO, and they're doubling down on not on denying insurance claims. Um. Anyways, here's drones in New Jersey.
yeah. Are aliens
And,
real?
yeah, and everyone moves on.
Yeah, and of course, as this documentary gets eternally more relevant, there was a section talking about UFOs and the controlling of the narrative by nudging people in certain directions. Even back then, where they're just like, oh, this
Yeah,
guy was talking about some stuff he saw. And then someone decided to be like, hey, maybe it's alien. Maybe it's a UFO you saw. People were like, oh,
yeah, yeah. It talks about how like a lot of UFO lore, a lot of UFO conspiracy, a lot of stuff in that sphere is just actually a psyop,
Yeah, like
right?
straight up that they just planted that with some people and just be like,
To-
hey,
to-
you might have
yeah,
saw some stuff, but oh, it was
it was
totally
aliens.
UFOs, guys. It was totally aliens.
Yeah,
It was
it was
no.
aliens. When actually they were just covering for top secret military
Yeah,
projects.
exactly. Like the New Jersey thing going on right now. Same exact stuff's happening. It's just getting flooded where it's like, you know, the government's out here saying, "Oh, we don't know what it is, but it's also not us, but it's also not a foreign country." And it's
Well,
just like,
they're
how
saying
could
it's a for. Well, they are saying it's
well,
a foreign country. It's people online saying it's aliens.
yeah, okay, yeah, you have all these different narratives trying to be like what's real, like no straight answers, like no one's.
Well, yeah, there's no evidence that it is a foreign country,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And frankly, some of the claims to support that are kind of just ridiculous, right? Like, oh yeah, there's an Iranian mothership off the coast
It's
of
just like,
the eastern seaboard. It's like, There's no evidence for that. That sounds kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And frankly, I doubt the Iranians have the logistics or like money, manpower, etc. for that. But like again, it's like it's left vague. No one knows what they are, who they belong to. No one what's going on really. And frankly, this is the first time this specific thing is happening either. By the way,
Oh no, of
remember
course
in
not.
2019 and 2020 the Colorado drones.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's been happening for a while. It's just,
Yeah,
sometimes the little
no one knows
story goes dormant, there
that.
no answer gets made, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah,
a couple years
and
later,
then people
oh,
move.
it's happening again.
Yeah, people just move on until the next thing happens. No one knows still what was up with the Colorado drones. It wasn't just in Colorado either, by the way. It was also they spread to Wyoming and Nebraska.
Yeah.
But again, no one knows what that was. It was just a thing that happened, and then it was over. And then the next story happened. It was an election year. You know, George Floyd riots, January 6th. It just gets buried by the next thing, by the current thing,
Yes.
right? Right?
Literally putting the psyop in Psyopticon.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, just
Yeah,
constant. All the
that
time.
that's ultimately
Overlapping.
yeah, that's ultimately what hypernormalization as a documentary is kind of set out to illustrate too as well. Like this is the story of the modern world, and this is still going on today, right? It's just next thing to the next thing. Everything is this schizophrenic, right, conspiracy chart, right? The little cork boards, right, with the
Yeah.
thread and the needles, right? Everything's a crazy Metal Gear plot. So you're just kind of left with trying to piece it all together, trying to. But the problem is that you're never done, right? There's
No,
always
no, it's
something new.
too
There's always.
complex and globe spanning to ever get to the bottom of it, and then always something new out of the blue
Oh yeah,
happens and just
and
completely
and it.
tosses that up in the air. And
Yeah, and so it kind of it leaves you at the end kind of just going, well, I mean, yeah, the thesis of the documentary is correct. I think the initial thesis, which is that the world is too complex for any one person, let alone any one person or even a group of people like a government to really comprehend fully, right? To really understand what's fully going on, right? Because there's just too much going on, and it's just new thing after another, right?
hmm,
So you're always stuck. It's a never-ending puzzle, right? It's this confusing, insane puzzle, but then you're also constantly given new pieces. It keeps expanding.
yeah,
Um, so by the end of it all, you're kind of just left wondering, well, again, which I think is like it feeds into itself, right? It's the point. Is how much of this is them, is the people in charge kind of purposefully doing this to distract us, and how much of it is just actually genuinely that the world is genuinely this complex and insane, right? You're left with the feeling that Surkov and the people who adopted his tactics want you to feel, which is I don't even know what's bullshit anymore. I don't know what's
yeah,
true. I don't know what's fake. I don't know what's going on. I'm confused. I'm scared. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if this is being done to me. I don't know if this is just how the world is, right? It feeds back into itself.
yeah, and makes such a environment again where it's almost impossible to do the revolution, or or to even begin to think of how one would be able to do such a thing. Like, not even just that, but like to do anything, really, anything of note, anything of the whole pulling away from politics type of thing. It's like, oh, if that's what that is, that's just insane. And how would you even manage to ever even consider entering a world like that?
It's one of the things where the other kind of thread of the documentary, I think, is important to the overarching picture, right? Because like we were saying earlier, kind of you it talks about how Silicon Valley forms really in the 80s, and you get these old hippies, right, who again they're also kind of naive and optimistic about the ability of people to really comprehend and act accordingly with
Yeah.
the events of the world, right? And kind of going, okay, once reality kind of sits in a bit, going, okay, well, we can't do this. But the dream doesn't die. The dream of managing the world doesn't die with this kind of reality bashing. Neither with Silicon Valley or with the politicians or anything like that. Um, not with the corporations or the banks or anything. Because what ends up happening, the Silicon Valley folks go, we can't do this, but maybe machines can. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
algorithms, maybe artificial intelligence can. We offload this, onto the algorithms, onto the AI, right?
Yeah.
It talks about how BlackRock is founded in this time, and they build Aladdin, right, which is just kind of monitoring the world, really, all the um, interactions that occur digitally, all the events, right? It's not just financial interactions, right? It's news, it's current events, it's happenings, right?
Yeah.
It's politics. Everything goes into this, right? It it almost is like kind of an attempt, a really early attempt in digital human history to build, an Earth simulator, like we talk about in the Anonymous Code episode,
Yeah.
right? It very much it's that impulse, right, to manage the world, which lends to this idea of like, well, humans aren't capable of processing all of this information, but a machine might be able to. A machine can. We'll let the machines do it. And then kind of where what I think I would want like a sequel, I guess, to this documentary to explore really is how um eventually it's not just that eventually the idea doesn't just become that the machines can process the information, but that they can also kind of take over management from people,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That's eventually what it's morphed into, right? Is the machines, they'll process it and they'll decide with what they process how to kind of do with that, what to do with the information they've processed, right? And you see this, right? Like this has
Yeah.
been the case for a while now, right? With the kind of, especially in the financial sector, right? And no one's really in control of the economy of finance. It's all run on AI basically.
Yeah.
It has been for a while now. Again, the whole BlackRock, Aladdin, all that stuff is really kind of the prelude to that. And it's just
Yeah.
again, it really is. It's like Metal Gear Solid 2, right? It's this um it's again, it's these very rich and powerful people coming together and saying we don't want chaos. We don't want the horrors of the early 20th century, right? We don't want
Mhm.
a repeat of that. Never again. But humanity can't handle that. We're not
No.
equipped, and especially now that we have weapons of mass destruction, like that danger is potentially an extinction level threat. That's ultimately the problem, right? Is we now pose an extinction level threat to ourselves.
Yes.
So what do the rich and powerful decide? The algorithms will process the information, will process all the stuff going on, and we'll leave it up to them. We'll take it out of our hands because we're not fit to run things ourselves. Though for a while they do think. I think for most of the documentary, the documentary doesn't really go into this dynamic really, but it's clear throughout the documentary that the elite, people in power, think they can manage based off that data themselves, right? That they can make the right decisions. But again, it also says they retreat into the simplistic world of fantasy, by and large, right?
Yeah, they fall for the similar
They fall
black
for
and
their own
white.
stories.
Yeah, the black and white view, the
Because
narratives,
it's
and
simpler, it's easier to understand.
yeah,
But it's only figures like Kissinger who really get that like the world is complex. It's more complex and it's more difficult. Um, and so you get this sense, right? Though again, it's unstated that, and if you know anything about kind of how things have turned out, right? If you kind of you realize that the elements left in the power structure that realize this come to the understanding that there's not enough of them to properly manage, in their opinion, the world. Too many of the rest of the people in power have retreated into fantasy, and so the management of the world cannot be left to them. Therefore, it has to be left into the hands of the machines, right? Of the algorithms they design to run the world, because the machines just have, more computing power. They're able to process far more information. They're able to network. They're able to see everything, hear everything. It runs itself. So you really get this MGS2 scenario where the Illuminati's long dead. It's the AI they leave behind that's kind of the real puppet masters controlling things, right? And obviously Metal Gear's an exaggeration, right? But I think kind of the underlying idea is very true, and it's really shown through this documentary, right? Is the world was too complex. The prior generation of statesmen, saw their fellow statesmen at the time retreating into delusion, and they said, "I don't trust that the next generation is going to be at all practically minded, because just look at the next generation." And they said, "Okay, we're gonna leave it to the autonomic intelligence. We're gonna leave it to the algorithms, right? We're gonna set up a system that still continues on doing what we want it to do after our death, because things are so complex that it's the machines, man."
yeah.
Um,
All under this pretense of the baseline of stability in their eyes, of course, to keep everything status quo forever. Like that's their, to
yeah,
help keep it as it is. Don't let any fancy revolutions happen.
don't rock the boat.
Don't rock the
Nothing
boat.
can
Yeah,
actually change anything.
no. But of course, uh, that's the flaw of the black and white view of how this all came about. How the system's too complex for that. So it the system is flawed just out of principle of like its inception, where
Yeah,
status quo forever is just impossible, literally impossible. You're not getting your infinite utopia. Like that's not how that
yeah,
works.
yeah. You don't get the liberal world order forever.
No.
It's coming
So
to an end whether you like it or not, right? And that's the whole project of the second half of the 20th century was exactly that, right?
mhm.
Frankly, it was kind of a fluke that like the events of the 20th century didn't end up killing the liberal order, right? Like
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's kind of a fluke. Like everything was pointing to the communists and the fascists being the ones who inherit the world from the liberals, but that didn't happen. And so the past over a half a century have been the project of making sure that kind of threat can never pop up again, but it was always going to pop back up. And the issue, right, is that if you try to it's the Kung Fu Panda thing, man. One often meets their fate on the path to take to avoid it. In trying so hard to push this back, to keep it at bay, all they've done is just built up pressure for
Yeah.
what comes next to be far more violent, far more destructive than it would have been if they just let things take their course, frankly. Which is, I think, it's a controversial thing to say, right? Because like the
Yeah.
ideologies of the 20th century were, whew,
Oh
oh
yeah.
boy.
That was something, but we have not seen anything yet.
Oh, exactly. What like uh, genuinely, I think Hitler and Stalin will look like downright moderates compared to what arises out of the ashes of the modern world. Um, it'll be brutal, right? It'll be
Yeah.
fucked. Um, and I think the worst part for these people in their dream in particular is that, as again kind of what the documentary is also saying by the end, is that a lot of this stuff will come out of the West, out of the liberal democracies, right? It won't be a foreign thing, though there is an element of that. It will arise from here
Yeah.
if it is allowed to rise.
Or or of
Um,
course, if it gets bad enough for it to happen, instead of just the slow decline. You know.
yeah, and that's kind of obviously this documentary was made in 2016, so like it doesn't really go into that because things
Mhm.
weren't that bad quite yet,
No. No. It's
right? Like we
just.
still were post 2008, right? So things weren't bad. I think it makes it fairly clear enough that like Trump and Brexit and all this stuff, he is rather uncharitable. Adam Curtis is rather liberal. He's rather, he's not super left wing. I want to say he's more center left, but like he's still not very charitable, and especially since the stuff was very like new. It was very recent. It's kind of you could tell he's kind of salty about it, honestly.
Hmm.
But like I think it's made clear enough if you're willing to be generous to him that like these don't come out of nowhere. These come out of very real grievances, right? Not it's not. I think he is kind of uncharitable. He does think it's a lot of it is just preying on the imaginary fears of the populace. But I don't think it entirely comes from that. I think it's clear to anyone who's not like brain dead that like this comes out of a very real grievance. It comes out of a very real awareness that uh, leftists and liberals failed to address the 2008 crash, right? The recession. They
Yeah.
failed, right, to do anything really about it. About in many cases, you get Obama coming in saying he's gonna really, he's gonna really fucking take it to the banks, right? He's gonna make them pay, right? And then what does he do? He bails them out, right? Too big to fail. Um, he does nothing but shield and protect them from the consequences of their actions. So you're left with a very real betrayal, right? After the American people really put their faith in him, right?
Yeah.
Um, they Obama won states in that election that I don't think the Democrats are ever going to win again. At least not anytime soon.
Mhm.
So you kind of you're left with a world that doesn't make sense. It hasn't made sense in decades. But it's only now, or at the time of the documentary, that people are really kind of starting to realize it, because that's when things were finally starting to get just insane enough, right? And that's when, I mean, social media the internet really had only just taken off, right? But I think before really the events of um, Occupy and the Arab Spring, the internet was just for weirdos, right? It was just for
Yeah.
nerds.
Yeah.
It's not until the late 2000s, early 2010s, really, that the internet becomes this thing that everyone and their mom uses, right? I remember like being an internet user, an avid internet user was weird, right? I was treated as a weirdo for that back in the mid to late 2000s, right? When I first started using the internet as a kid, as a small child. And so like you're just left with this world that the internet has allowed people, everyday people, to see the insanity, right? So it's not just the elites who are in this kind of, it's not just the elites, it's not just the like professional activists who like were a small class of people relative to the population. It's everyone now. Everyone can see the hyper normalization, can see that we're in this Psyopticon, right? Everyone's
Yes.
getting bombarded now. It's not just these people, these small groups of people who are looking at the world and going, "Holy shit, this is too complex for us, and we need to just retreat."
Yeah.
Right?
Now
It's
it's
everyone.
everyone on all sides of the, you
Yes,
know,
exactly.
political spectrum, the class,
Left, right,
whatever.
center, rich, poor. It's
Yeah.
everyone. It is everyone.
Yeah. Most are getting driven insane by it, by
Yeah.
the sheer volume of information and stuff going on. And
Yeah, most people are like not Kissinger brained. They can't handle
yeah,
it.
yeah,
This documentary is from 2016, so like we were saying, it's kind of outdated. Things have progressed, obviously, right? It's
yeah,
it's been almost a decade, right? 2 more years,
yeah,
and it'll be the 10th anniversary of hypernormalization. So we'll have come a long way from then. Things have changed a lot. A lot of stuff has happened. And we're frankly further away from reality than we were back then.
yes, yeah. No, it's gotten even harder to
It's so much worse.
so much.
Yeah, I mean, just today, just earlier today, right? Like you posted that article. Or no, it
Oh
wasn't an
yeah,
article. It was a Twitter post from the Daily Mail that
yeah,
said that a Trump insider claims the drones are a part of Project Bluebeam. Which honestly, we may need to do an episode
yeah.
on that
That's
in and of
also
itself.
pretty relevant.
So saying that the drones are part of Project Bluebeam and that the coming days will not be good. And then I click on the actual article linked in the tweet, and um, there's no insider. It's mostly just speculation from like online users and a few uh, government officials, a few politicians. No Trump insider. The quote, "The coming days will not be good," isn't even in the article. So it's like, it's just a lie.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, exactly. And it's getting posted by these, you know, known news or whatever sites accounts. It's just like, oh, you know. Hence why I didn't put it in the news section, because I was just like, funny headline.
yeah, you put it in the like paranormal meme section, because yeah, how many people have seen that, and they didn't bother to actually look at the
Mm,
article. They just read the headline and go, "Oh, Trump insider confirms." Yep, yep.
yeah,
But like Like, no, there's nothing about the only mention of Bluebeam is in the article, in the actual article, is from like online schizos, basically, that are quoted in it. The officials, the government officials, the politicians in it, they don't say anything about Bluebeam. They just say, maybe it's Iran, mothership off the coast. Maybe, I don't know. Like, it's
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just completely fraudulent. But like, how many people now believe that there's a Trump insider, quote unquote, who's like, yeah, this is Bluebeam, right? um, this has been a problem for a while now. But again, I think it's something that happened just recently. That's kind of a microcosm of just how bad things have gotten in the realm of reality, right? Where things that aren't true or become reality, and things that are true, are not, right? They're not
Yeah.
part of what people consider to be reality. But it's always hard to tell. It's impossible to tell. How many people do you talk to who like believe things that like you're like, that's bullshit, that's not real?
Yeah.
But how do you know?
Yeah.
You get your news, you get your information from the exact same, not the exact same sources, but in the exact same manner
Yeah.
that these these people do, that everyone does now, from the internet, from their feeds, right? From YouTube, from Twitter, whatever.
And
Um,
interestingly, just to extend from this episode itself, by the time we put it out, either this story, the little drone adventure, whatever. But no, it won't. What I was gonna say is like, no, it's not gonna. There's probably not gonna be an answer. It's gonna be the little thing for the
probably
next
gonna be
week.
forgotten.
Yeah, it's gonna be the little blurb for the next week or so, and then that's it. And it's gonna be gone, and then it's gonna be forgotten, and it'll be on to the next whatever happens. And this episode, like this little talk, would be like, oh, what that happened? Well, you don't know about this next thing that happened, and the next thing, and
I feel like that's
it'll
a
be
lot of
all.
episodes, though.
Oh yeah,
We
of
talk a, we
course,
talk a lot about a lot of things that like
of like
a few
ongoing, and
people,
then
a few people who I know who like have listened, they will be like, "What are you talking about? That's a thing that happened?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like look
yeah.
it up."
If anything, it's a good little snapshot into the time it comes out of like what
Yeah,
strange little things have been going on and how quickly they've been forgotten. Like I'm sure
yeah.
I could go back to an episode from like 5 months ago and be like, what? I don't remember that at all. Like it's like damn, just completely faded. So like use this as
Yeah,
like a
that
little
dynamic is really a
of
part of what we're talking about in
proof
this
of
episode.
how just
And we're
crazy
in
how
the
fast.
Psyopticon. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, maybe that little UFR arc or whatever the drone arc is will play out into something, but I doubt it. I think it's just going to
Yeah,
be
for all
like
we know,
hush hush.
it is entirely fake, and it is
Yeah,
basically some Project Bluebeam type shit, where it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like,
It could be that. It could be that.
uh,
It could be the so many different stories of like, oh, is it actually aliens? No, it's like, oh, is it drones? Is it foreign country? Is it the two
is it a
sides of
bunch of
like, oh,
college
it's
kids fucking
yeah,
around? I don't know.
yeah, yeah. Is it just New Jersey people who've never seen planes before losing their minds because they can see planes now for some reason they looked up for the first time in their life?
Well, yeah, that's another
And
thing. It could just be mass hysteria.
yeah, yeah,
That is an
exactly.
option.
Just facilitated by the internet. Because now people will post it and then it spreads and now everyone everywhere is talking about like this like crazy like, oh my god, guys, look at the aliens, the
Yeah,
evil drones, the glowy, like Area 51 craft. It's like, oh, they're spraying chemical agents and it's poisoned a bunch of people in this small town in New Jersey. And it's like, what? Oh, they're
oh
looking for
yeah,
nuclear weapons, or the other side of it. It's like, oh, actually, it's a distraction because they're gonna plant one as a, false flag, and all these just everything under the sun has come out of the woodwork in regards to this little story that's been going on, and just like, what's real? We're probably not gonna find out.
that's real. Yeah. No, we'll probably never know. Like I said, we still don't know what the hell happened in 2019, 2020
No,
with the Colorado drones. We
no,
still don't have an answer
and
for that.
no one's.
Eh,
And I see no one's
no.
bringing up the Chinese balloons. No one's said a thing about that since that happened. That's another interesting little thing that has just faded. What happened to the good old days of calling every single UFO a weather balloon, and then that actually happened, and it's like, oh, it actually was a weather balloon. Wait a second, that's not supposed to be here.
Well, then it just becomes another story, right? Once you get an
Yeah,
answer, then it just that's the
no,
thing, right? Is you get an answer, it's just another story. Move on, right? If you don't get an answer, well, it's taking too long. Move on.
yeah,
um, and so yeah, I think you're right. The internet has really kind of created a vector for mass hysteria that is unlike anything we've ever seen before.
yeah.
Um, and I don't think we've reckoned with that. And I think that's part of what hypernormalization is about. Is it's the ultimate tool for this, right? The internet is the ultimate tool for the process of hypernormalization, but also mass hysteria kind of. I mean, really, this is a great episode. This episode I think is a real great sequel to the Lane episode,
Yeah.
right? Which is itself kind of a culmination of a lot of stuff we've talked about before in terms of the breakdown of reality and how people kind of they don't know fact from fiction anymore. It's hard to tell, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
It's not just that people don't know. It's just that it's just genuinely hard to tell in the modern world what is real and what is fake because there's so much going on. You don't know whether the information you're getting is accurate or not. You don't know where it's coming from. You don't know what the motive behind the information you're getting is. Why are you being told it? By whom? And so you can get people going all schizo over a bunch of drones in New Jersey.
Yeah.
If there even are any drones, I don't know. I don't know. It might just be mass hysteria. Now that we talk about that, I think with the next episode or another an episode following this one, we should watch and then do an episode on Paranoia Agent.
Ooh.
I feel that really
Yeah.
fits in with this. It's a good like next step, I think.
Right.
It's a good show. I really like it. Satoshi Kon was a god, rip in peace. But I think that the themes of that show really tie into this and are a good explanation of this stuff, right? From quite a while ago, right? It's 2004 anime.
Mhm.
It's like Lane Part Two, really, in some ways, where it was ahead of its time in understanding what was to come. But yeah, that was hypernormalization and the
Yes.
Psyopticon.
Yes.
Um,
We'll be back to you
hope you
soon,
can break out
probably.
of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Best of
again,
luck.
as I said at the start, if you're listening to this from the wasteland, because many things pop off and things just accelerate to the point of real insanity. Who knows? Or nothing changes, and it's just oh, it's just a little worse. But
Damn, maybe Posadas was right. Maybe the only way to exit the Psyopticon, to exit modernity, is to just nuclear annihilation. You have to just
full accelerationism in this house, bro. It's
nuclear accelerationism.
yes, exactly. So there we go. That's your little that's the ending. There you
Yeah. Uh, yeah.
accelerate.
It's nothing ever happens. It's always been over. Um, and nuke the planet. There we go.
Yeah, just end it. End it. Come on.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah,
it.
that's the new motto. You remember fucking hackers, right? Hack the planet, hack the planet. We're changing that. We're changing it to nuke the planet, baby.
Simple as we go.
Become a nuclear accelerationist today.
Legalize nuclear bombs. Why?
Ah!
Я повторяю 10 раз и снова. Никто не знает, как же мне хуёво. И телевизор с потолка свисает.